Hello everybody, welcome to the MudRoom, our weekly Uncommon Sense parenting class. How is everyone today? We are now officially on the downslope to back to school around here. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really ready. Summer seemed so short as a kid, but as an adult, it feels like I blink and it's just done. And I'm just really not ready for the snow. Like here in Canada, we start trying on snowsuits and winter gear around now in August because that's when it starts going on the store shelves, and the closer to actual snow you get, the more expensive it gets. So I have to pull out snowsuits and boots this week and see if they fit my kids or if we can get like another year out of them. Unfortunately, my boys are now approximately the same size, even though there's 2.5 years between them. So I can't even really effectively hand things down anymore, which kind of sucks. It's a whole thing. All right, today, since we're heading down the track to back to school, and it's been a really hot topic lately, I figured we'd talk about red-shirting kindergartners. This is something I get asked about a lot, because I redshirted my oldest, Logan, who is now going into grade 3. But had I not held him back, he would be going into grade 4. This is also kind of a difficult topic to cover, which is why I haven't until now, because there's different laws everywhere. And every school system and even every school board is different. But we're going to cover the main issues that we considered and how I made the decision to keep him back, so that if this is an issue for you, you can follow the same basic format and hopefully come out with a decision that you're comfortable with. Before I get into it, however, allow me to introduce myself for those of you who are new around here. Hi, my name is Allana Robinson, and I'm a parenting coach for parents of toddlers, preschoolers, and kindergartners. I help you understand why your children are misbehaving and how to fix it without stickers, counting to 3, or losing your shit. I'm your host here on the MudRoom. I'm also your host of the Parenting Posse Facebook group, and I'm the creator of the Parentability program, where I help you raise independent, confident, competent kids who listen. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so that you never miss another class. Okay, so as I said, this is a bit awkward to cover because everywhere has different rules. So that's the very first step, is to research the rules that apply to you locally. Pretty much everywhere now has their laws online. So off to the Google machine, and the Google formula for this is going to look like whatever regional area regulates education local to you. Here in Canada, it's the province. In the US, it seems to be the county or city for some reason. I have absolutely no idea how it's done in the UK or Europe. And you want to pair that with Education Act. Again, it's going to be called something completely different depending on where you are. But in general, the term Education Act will bring up the relevant law. Once you find it, you want to search for the section that deals with attendance generally. Again, they're going to call it different things, but you're looking for the section that dictates the age children start school local to you. So in Ontario, where I am, that's Section 21 of the Ontario Education Act. In that section, it should state what age children are required to start grade 1 or kindergarten at, or both. Most countries don't actually mandate kindergarten. It's generally available and encouraged, but it's not mandatory. Your children don't have to go. So in Ontario, there's actually no law on when children have to be in kindergarten because it's optional. The law only starts applying to grade 1 and up. So in this section, it should also state what the exceptions are and under what circumstances. Again, in Ontario, it states that children have to start grade 1 the year they turn 6, and then in the next section, or the next little subsection, it states that children who would turn 6 on or after the first day of school, which is typically the Tuesday after Labor Day in September here, have the option to start grade 1 the year they turn 7. There's no stipulations to that. So that's the rule that applies to me. Again, it's going to be different everywhere, so you really need to look it up, because if your child falls outside of that rule, then there's really no decision to make. I had a decision to make with my oldest because he's a November baby. He would have turned 6 after the first day of school. My youngest, however, is a June baby, so there was no decision to make for him. He was mandated to be in grade 1 the year he turned 6, which is actually this year. He's starting grade 1 in September. So know your law, because that's the basic piece of information that you need. The second thing you want to do is get clear on why you want to redshirt your child. What's your evidence that this is the best route for your kid? This can be anecdotal. It can be any assessments or evaluations you've had done on your child. It can be recommendations from their preschool teachers or therapists. If this is the case, I always ask that they write their recommendation down on their professional letterhead and sign it. It can be research, but you need to have a reason that you want to hold your child back. I just don't feel like they can handle it is not a good enough reason, and it likely won't be accepted by your school board. None of us are ready for our children to start formal schooling. It's a huge change, not just for them, but for us. It changes your entire routine and how every day in your year plays out. But if you go to principals, directors, superintendents, trustees, whomever you have to convince of this decision's office, and say, I just don't feel like they're ready, they're going to roll their eyes at you. So you need to have a concrete reason for this choice. If you don't have any concrete reasons and you can't come up with any, then again, that's your choice made. Your child is actually ready for school and you're just uncomfortable with the transition. When I was choosing to redshirt Logan, I had a bunch of evidence. My career prior to becoming a parenting coach was as a developmental specialist for children who have special needs. So I had access to a bunch of different assessments, and the two that I'd done on Logan were the Carolina curriculum and the Hawaii Early Learning Profile, also known as the HELP. Both of those showed that academically he was right where a 3-year-old should be. In Ontario, we have junior kindergarten that typically starts the year children turn 4. So I was making the case that I didn't want my 3-year-old in kindergarten and the case that I didn't want my 5-year-old in grade 1 because that's what the law actually applied to. So I used these assessments to demonstrate that Logan was not ahead developmentally in terms of academics. I also used these documents that he was not ahead socially. In fact, his social development was on the slow side, which wasn't a concern in any way, shape, or form, but again, I was focused on demonstrating that my 3-year-old should not be put in a class with 4 and 5-year-olds, and that by extension, my 5-year-old should not be in a classroom with 6 and 7-year-olds. I also had research that had been done by the largest school board in my province that showed that children who enrolled in junior kindergarten at the age of 3 were 72% more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. And research that showed that boys in particular struggle with second language learning environments, which was relevant because my kids are both enrolled in French immersion programming. I also made the argument that we had recently moved provinces, and in the province that we were coming from, Logan would have entered grade 1 at age 7 anyways because the cutoff date was different there. And I'd planned his activities and his educational journey in line with the expectation that he wouldn't be in grade 1 until age 7. Finally, I had that anecdotal evidence that all of Logan's friends were born the year after him. He was a November baby, and all his good friends that he enjoyed spending time with were born in January and beyond. And I had a letter from our local drop-in programming confirming that when given the choice, Logan would always choose the children slightly younger than him versus going with an older peer group. So some things to consider. Where is your child's social development at? Do they gravitate towards older or younger children when they're at preschool or daycare? Is there any research relevant to your circumstances? Does your child's preschool or daycare teacher have concerns? Do they have a diagnosis? Does your child's learning style make school more difficult for them? Once you have all of your evidence gathered and you're like, yep, this is the right decision for our family and we have the legal right to make this decision, then you have to convince the powers that be. Here in Ontario, that's typically the principal of the school, but the board has veto rights. For instance, I tried to enroll Logan in the French public school local to us, and the principal was 100% convinced he has French language rights through his grandmother, his great-grandmother. But then the board vetoed him and said that no, Logan had to be put into his birth year cohort. He was going to be pushed ahead a year. Where we ended up was in the English public board, but in a French immersion program, which I was satisfied with. French education is extremely important to me, given where we live. Again, depending on where you live, you'll have to evaluate your priorities and figure out who needs to sign off on this and how, and then make a meeting with them and present your evidence and convince them to sign off on it. As I said, I had to do this multiple times because we have the choice between 4 different school boards, and I was considering 3 of them. So I ranked my choices, and I started by meeting with the French public board, and I was told no. So I moved to meeting with the English public board, and they were on board. Had they not been on board, I would have then moved to the English Catholic board, which I wouldn't have been very happy with, as they don't have French immersion until grade 4, but I knew my priorities. Having him in the correct grade for his development was more important to me than his second language learning in school. So I'd ranked my priorities so that at this point, I was just working down the list. I wasn't having to make pro-con choices at this point. I already knew what my priorities were and what was going to trump what. The important thing when you're having these meetings is not to ask permission. It's to run the meeting as though you're confirming this is the choice you're making and you're just informing them. It's not a please can I, it's my choice that, and I want to ensure that that's respected. Go with all of your evidence because many boards have policies that are in direct contravention of the law, so you're going to have that evidence handy. And the other important thing is not to have this meeting during the year you're hoping to have your child skip. I didn't have these meetings the year Logan was 3. I had them the year he was already 4, and I was acting as though that's just how it should be. Once you enroll your child in school, it's much harder to hold them back. There's lots of evidence that moving children ahead or behind a grade is catastrophic for their social life, so the chances of you getting them to keep your child in kindergarten once they're already there is slim. There's also funding issues if your child is already in kindergarten. This meeting should be timed so that you're basically explaining to them why your child's paperwork says they're going into kindergarten instead of grade 1. In Ontario, I was explaining why my child's paperwork said that he was going into junior kindergarten instead of senior kindergarten. And that's pretty much it. I get asked all the time if I'm happy with the decision, and I can unequivocally say that yes, I am. Logan is absolutely in the right grade. When I'd originally convinced the principal to redshirt him, she requested that we reevaluate at the end of the year, and I agreed. But that meeting never actually happened because by then his teacher saw what I saw and agreed that he wasn't ready for grade 1, he should go into senior kindergarten. So I dodged that bullet, and then he ended up doing grade 1 at home because of the pandemic. But I highly doubt that he'd have integrated into grade 2 as easily as he did if he'd missed grade 2 and had to go back to grade 3, because the curriculum is matched to his development where he is now. He is happy as a clam, he has tons of good friends, I get rave reviews about his behavior constantly. He was actually in a 2-3 split this year, which I'm 100% positive that they put him in because of his birth date, since he wasn't in attendance for grade 1, so they wouldn't have known if he was ahead or behind. So he did have the opportunity to do higher level work and interact with older kids, and once again, his teacher affirmed that he was in the proper grade, he wasn't pushing into grade 3 level work consistently, and he wasn't mainly socializing with the grade 3 students. So 4 years on, I am really happy with the decision we made and how we made it. So I hope that helps you conceive of how to approach this, how to make this decision, and what kind of hoops you may have to jump through. Again, it's going to be different everywhere. Some regions are far more accepting of redshirting than others, so the amount of pushback that you're going to experience will vary as well. But if you ensure that you're leading with your legal rights, you gather your evidence, and you know your priorities, you're unlikely to take a wrong turn. As always, if you have questions or you need some more guidance on how to apply this to your family, come and find us in the Parenting Posse and we'd be happy to work you through it. The link for that is in the description. Thanks so much for being here with me today, and I will see you next week for another Uncommon Sense parenting class. Bye!